Madam Mayor, but you do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything that members would like to pull from the consent agenda? Anybody need more time? No, you're fine. Okay. Alrighty. So there's are there any other changes to the agenda? Yes. Assemblyperson Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to suggest moving ordinance 22119 to the top of the public hearings. That would make it so all these folks don't have to sit through our entire meeting here to have their say. So,
Okay. Is there objections to that change in the agenda? Okay, seeing none, then after the special orders, the persons to be heard that we don't have anybody, we will open the public hearing for ordinance 22-119. I'm sorry, Brenda, what's that? Yeah. Is there objection to that? Oh, okay. Are there any other changes? You will let the record show that Assemblyperson Bernard 604, 603? I don't know what you wrote there. I'm trying to 603. Okay. So hearing no other changes, then the agenda is approved. If you'll all stand, and Mayor Gledford, would you lead us in the pledge, please? You lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There are no minutes on our agenda to be approved. The next item on our agenda is agency reports. So I'll recognize you again, lady. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor DeVries, Manager Brown, and Assembly. I'm Glenda Ledford, Mayor for the City of Wasilla. Saturday at the Old Town site, we will have an Autumn Fest from 11 to 3. There will be live demonstrations. There will be workshops for kids. It's a family-friendly event. And at the Menard Center, starting at 6 o'clock, Saturday night is the, what is it, Jesse? I forgot. Anyway,
Where's Crystal at?
it is the Rotary Uncorked event. That's what it is.
Okay.
How could you forget that? Anyway, it is a fundraiser for by the Rotary, and it goes to several charities, and one of them being my house. And that's about all that's happening in the city except election today. So, does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nice to have you here this evening. Is there anyone here from the city of Palmer or from the city of Houston? No, I don't see anyone. Okay, school district. Do we have anybody from the school district for a report? No. State of Alaska. I don't see Todd. And Stephanie Nowers, Assemblyperson Nowers, has a report from the joint assembly meeting with the school board committee and the assembly member.
So we had a few items. I'll keep it short. One disappointing item was the Wasilla Police Department is short on staff, and so they're having to pull their school resource officers for temporarily from Colony and Houston. Just an overall staff shortage that we're all facing. The school district gave an update on busing and said they're looking at October 24th as a target date to go to just 1 day a week, that they will not have busing. They've been doing 2 days a week. and then November to be up to full busing. We discussed vehicle safety and traffic around the schools and trying to plan ahead on that so that we have good traffic flow and we don't back up onto roads and make them unsafe. We discussed needed capital improvements as well as the funding for charter schools and just a discussion about how we could potentially plan for and fund that looking down the line 5 to 10 years. There was an update on Seward Meridian. There's been a lot of concerns about that project moving forward. It's a DOT project, and there was, as far as we know, it's on track, but there was discussion about getting folks together with DOT so they can hear straight from the horse's mouth. And I believe there was a date for that to be happening, but I don't have that in my notes if anybody else who was at the meeting remembers.
Do you know? I can't remember that they gave the date, but do you remember, sir? Okay.
At the very least, I know there's a project update online that folks can go to, and if we can get a date, we'll get that information to folks.
October 12th? Okay. All right. Any questions of assembly person hours? Okay. Are any public relations reports? Okay. Mr. Brown, no report. Mr. Attorney, do you have a report, sir?
I do not.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
The clerk's report is in your red folder. It also contains the joint meeting agenda with the Planning Commission for next Tuesday. And also, I would like to ask the Assembly if they would mind changing the December 6th meeting to December 8th. AML is going on at that time, so I was hoping the Assembly would change that meeting to December 8th.
Yes, can we just do that without, I can just ask for no objection?
Yep,
Okay. Is there any objection to postponing that meeting?
or changing it.
And changing it from the 6th of December to the 8th? The 8th would be on a Thursday night instead of a Tuesday. Okay, I don't see any objections, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, and that is all I had.
Okay. There are no citizens or other correspondence. And Madam Clerk, when you're ready to read the IM.
I am 22219, informing the Assembly of the electronic submittal of the fiscal year 2024 Human Services Community Matching Grant application through the Department of Health and Social Services Grant Electronic Management System.
Is there any comments from the Assembly on the IM? Okay, hearing none, it is presented. We do not have any persons to be heard. So based upon the change to the agenda, we will now move and have the first public hearing on Ordinance 22-119. And Mr. Attorney, are you doing the staff report? Or are you? Oh, you read it. Okay.
Ordinance 22-119, an ordinance amending Title 25, Elections, to require ballots be counted by hand only, direct that counting happen at precincts, and allow for observation by poll watchers and canvass board observers, all to be effective beginning in 2023. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Okay. Okay. Yes, go ahead, Mr.
Sure, I'll
Attorney,
give the
for staff
staff
report.
report. This ordinance is sponsored by Assemblymember Bernier to amend Borough Code to mandate a hand count of all ballots in all borough elections. The objective of this ordinance is to make all changes necessary to the Borough Code to prohibit the use of voting tabulation machines and require a hand count of all ballots at the precincts the night of the elections, and also preserve the flexibility granted to the clerk to conduct an orderly election. These changes direct that for absentee and question voters, the counting can't occur on election night, so that would occur immediately after canvassing in observance of poll watchers, should any be present. The rules pertaining to poll watchers aren't being changed. They're being clarified a little bit that poll watchers would be able to see and hear all the counting activities. But as the rules currently stand, it's only one per candidate or group at a time in a precinct location. Under purposes of this ordinance for ballot counting, the absentee, questioned, early voting precincts would be counted as one. Well, early voting would be separate because that would be counted night of. But after the canvass board, that would be counted as a separate precinct. As mentioned in the title, these changes would take effect, in the next year, which is 2023. It's because since the November 8th, 2022 election is basically just over a month away, these changes would not apply. That's based on something called the Purcell Doctrine, which is a U.S. Supreme Court case that cautions strongly against making changes to election laws just before an election. So these then would have a delayed effective date and take effect for next year. There's a sectional analysis, section by section, contained in the informational memorandum that goes along with this ordinance to explain what changes are made by section and what the intent and the objective of those changes are.
Okay. Questions from the assembly regarding the staff report? Okay, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing. And we do have some people that have signed up already to testify. And so what we'd like to do tonight to maybe speed up things is I will read the name of the person that's to testify, and then I'll read the name of the second person so they can either move close to the front or stand close so that they are ready to testify next. So we will be doing that change tonight. So, and then we will be, a number of people have signed up. We will be going through that list first, and then we'll be opening it up to anybody else that wants to testify. I don't know, we maybe have some people online. We'll go to them, and then we'll come back just to be sure we got everybody here that has gotten a chance to vote or to testify themselves. So that's going to be the procedure for not only this public hearing, but for all of our public hearings. So Cheryl, and then Rachel, you are second. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Kaidan. I'm a resident of this area. And I really encourage you strongly to support this ordinance as written to improve and ensure that we can have confidence in our voting and election system. Heritage Organization has done studies, and Alaska does not, kind of in the middle of the pack, but it does fairly poorly, really, on the in our election system. So having confidence is essential in having good governance. And the last presidential election, there were like over 154 million votes, and the separation was only 21,500. And we have a person in this room who was elected by a very close election. So we must have essential, careful counts, and also have observers that can actually see what's going on and hear what's going on. And this ordinance would help assure that those things would be accomplished. So thank you, everyone who has been working on this, and I really appreciate Lonnie and the people that run, actually do the physical elections for considering this. Thanks. Bye.
Rachel? And then Brian, you're up after that. There you are. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Hello, I'm Rachel Allen. I've been watching several of these meetings, and it's become apparent to me that what the people want doesn't really matter. You give them a little bit here, a little bit there. And for example, even people want the machines for this election. It's not that hard. When talking to people, and I've been talking to a lot of people, the common concern is the machines. People simply don't trust them. I'm not going to rehash all the evidence because you've heard it over and over, and it's readily available to go over and look at. One thing I will say, though, is that the borough elections are relatively small in comparison to the state and federal elections. So my guess is that the electronic machine companies will not touch the algorithms or any other part of the machines during the borough elections, so they can say, see, the machines are reliable. There's no problems. The fact of the matter is the people want the machines gone. I pray you will finally vote to do the will of the people. And I want to end with this. Be a leader, a maverick. Stand alone if you have to for what is right. John Adams stood before the Continental Congress in 1776. He neither looked right or left to see who would vote with him. But after praying, he voted for the Declaration of Independence because it was good and right. I would prefer you guys lead us. If you cannot, follow us. If you cannot, then get out of our way. Remove the machines once and for all. Thank you.
Brian? And Richard, you're after Brian.
Brian Endel, thank you for hearing me tonight. And I want to specifically thank Ron Bernier for bringing this ordinance forward and allowing our group to have some input and participation in this. I like this ordinance as it is. It has three points of transparency that we've wanted. One, it gets rid of the voting machines. Two, it gives us a hand count at the precinct level. Three, it gives us candidate representatives that can see and hear what goes on. I read this ordinance over a number of times, and we've looked over it with a fine-tooth comb, and we like it as it is. So please vote for this ordinance as is. This ordinance has been I should say, advertised, both by the borough, as it should be, and also by other people, such as myself. We pushed Facebook pushes and emails and everything. So I don't think there's a need to delay this one. That's it. Thank you.
Jackie, you're after Richard.
I'm Richard Stoffel, and just going to kind of reiterate some what the attorney said and the other lady. And I'm thankful for this ordinance, and I do encourage you to pass it. But on November 8th, this ordinance, as you know, is not going to be effective for November 8th. So we still have the machines, but we have the hand count after the machines. I don't know why we have machines, but I call them, actually I'm starting to call them computers because that makes it more clear what they do. And we cannot trust a computer to count our vote. And then at the ordinance, it does start on the first of the year, and it does take away the computers, and there's a hand count in the precincts, which is good. That we have poll watchers and we have candidates from representative watching, and the count is done in 24 hours. Those are all good. What we don't have, though, is effective serial numbers on the ballot. There's a serial number, but then it gets torn off the ballots. It doesn't go with it. And the cameras aren't mandated. But I do encourage you to pass it as it is.
Cindy, you're after Jackie.
My name is Jackie Goforth. Thank you for listening to me. I, too, would like this ordinance passed. And the new reason is because last Thursday it came out that the Dominion in Tennessee and in Georgia, during the close of the October 2021 local election, poll workers noticed something was wrong. 330 paper ballots were removed from the tabulators, but the machine only gave them a count of 98. 232 ballots were unaccounted for. So the state of Tennessee and two accredited entities that test voting machines investigated the anomaly, and they found out that a security error would show QR code signature mismatch, and the warning message, ballot format or ID was unrecognizable, caused 7 scanners to miscount hundreds of ballots in Williamson County. What happens is that as soon as the error showed up, it wouldn't count the ballot that was there or any of them following that until somebody reset the machine. So the election oversight group in Georgia put in a information request for the Georgia. 60 of the 66 Georgia counties, they wanted to know how many in 2020 had that same QR code signature mismatch, and it came out that 64 of them did. And here's that one. Sorry. In DeKalb County, approximately 2,800 ballots had been scanned, but they were not included in the tabulator results. They all went to the They all were sent to I can't remember the file. In Gwinnett County, 2020 election, approximately 1,600 ballots were scanned, but they weren't in the tabulated results. And in Floyd County, the hand count found 2,800 ballots that were scanned, but they were not included. They go into Dominion's voter file that's an anomaly that the supervisor gets to open up. And if you haven't looked at the news lately, this just came out of Michigan. A volunteer election worker in Michigan has been charged with 2 felony charges after inserting a personal USB drive into a precinct computer during the August 2nd primary. Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker announced he charged James Donald Holobor with falsifying election records and using a computer to commit a crime in the incident. These are all things that you can look up. These machines don't just count. They can be changed and altered by absolutely anyone, and even with a thumb drive. And if you listened to me 2 weeks ago when I spoke to you about the errors that they found with the Dominion machine that was contacting the Canadian Conic company out of Michigan, and they were contacting the computer in China, they found 1.8 million poll workers' data on that site. 1.8 million poll workers' data. Children, schools, jobs, social security numbers. It sounds like blackmail. So if anybody can change this machine, we have to remove them. Thank you.
Cindy, and then Joel Sigmund. You're after Sydney.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Hudgens, and I live here in Palmer. First off, I want to thank everybody for this ordinance. This is something that there's so many people have spoken about this and shared their concerns about the machines. We don't trust them. We know they can be hacked. We know that they do not offer us a fair and free election with integrity. So thank you for putting this forward and for putting it out there. And I am definitely for this ordinance, as you can see. So that's just all I wanted to say. Have a good evening.
So Michael Gerhardt is after Joel.
Yeah, my name is Joel Sigmund. And by the way, on the 2020 election, them Democratic states went ahead and changed all the voting things during the election time. And that's wrong. Now, saying we can't do it, take and have it to where it's only done by hand count is a bunch of BS when they can do it in the 2020 election. Just like Lisa Murkowski sitting there certifying Alaska when it was never counted. That's a bunch of BS. Those machines cannot be trusted. We all know that. And for you guys to sit there and want them, any one of you who want them machines should have to step up and find yourself another job, because you shouldn't be up there, because you're supposed to be working for the people, not to fill your own pockets up. So if you can't work for the people, step down, get out of the way, let somebody that's going to do the job right do it. And that's the way I feel about it, because I'm tired of this crooked election. We know 2020 was stolen. And that's a fact.
Karen, you're after Michael.
My name's Michael Gerhardt. I live in Wasilla. I worked 3 elections, and the last presidential election, it was an anomaly, a couple of them. They gave us the felt tip pens for one. Then almost every ballot got kicked back out of the Dominion machine. They were falling on the floor. You either had to pick them up or you had to stop them from falling on the floor, submit them again. That didn't happen on the previous 2 elections. So there was something wrong. I haven't trusted an election since with the Dominion machines, and I never will. We need to get rid of them. So this is a good ordinance. It's in the right direction. We need to keep going in the right direction. And something that would save us time is if all of you take notes. The last time I was here, we had a discussion about a different ordinance that was going to use the Dominion machine and a hand count. Almost everybody spoke out against the Dominion machines. Take notes, make check marks, count them up. We got a second meeting. We all have to drive 25, 30 miles to come in here again. Just start keeping track. It'll save us a lot of time, but this is a good ordinance, so I'm for it.
Karen? And John, you're after Karen.
Good evening. Could I pass these out to the assembly
Yeah,
people?
give it to the clerk, please.
I printed those out for you, Karen Lewis, LEWIS. I printed those out for you because it pertains to some of the information that I'm reading tonight, and it's about the Dominion machines and forensic analysis on it. And it says, a new expert report analyzing the computer hard drive on a Dominion voting systems machine in Mesa County, Colorado, concludes that during the 2020 general and 2021 municipal elections, a critical security failure occurred, allowing unauthorized databases to be created and populated with ballots that cannot be verified. The bombshell report, authored by cyber experts Jeffrey O'Donnell, Chief Information Officer at Ordos Analytics, and Walter C. Dougherty, Senior Lecturer Emeritus at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Texas A&M University, found that the unauthorized activity occurred after counting of ballots in those elections had already begun and that it was committed by unknown actors outside the office of the Mesa County Clerk and Recorder. Wow. The findings are based on a forensic examination and analysis of the election machine server images commissioned by County Clerk and Recorder Tina Peters. Boy, did she get in trouble for taking images before they were erased. Peters had the images of the machine hard drive made in May 2021, just before the Dominion voting systems, under the direction of Democrat Secretary of State Jenna Griswold, eradicated election data from the drive and what Griswold dubbed the trusted build. Other findings from the forensic examination of the Mesa County hard drive were set forth in two earlier reports. Those reports concluded that the trusted build by Griswold and Dominion permanently destroyed over 29,000 files from the hard drive, which were required to be maintained for at least 2 years under state and federal law. They also found that the Dominion voting machine was illegally embedded with 36 wireless devices, which could enable cell phones and other external computers to access the machine and alter the election results. Despite, what I gave you is like pictures. It's very, I like the way they explained it. So I took screenshots and put them together so you could see exactly what they're talking about, how they created a false database and took some and left some, and it's just ridiculous what they did. But that's just one state. I also have this information too. I'd like to give one to Lonnie to have it copied for you too, because this is about also Arizona, Wisconsin, and one other state. And it's got information. Also in the back, the last page, you can go to that. It's a website, it's 87 pages of this study, every bit of it. It's just detailed. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate this more than you can understand. It's important to us to have fair elections. Thank you. Thank you.
So I don't have anybody signed up for after John, so just somebody go ahead and stand up, and 2 or 3 of you stand there in the aisle, and then so we can click along, please. John, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Assembly, and particularly thank you, Ron, for bringing this ordinance to us, and Dee for getting the ball rolling. I support this ordinance the way it's written also. And if there's any way to convey the sentiments of the public out there, I would like to try to do that. I've been asking people if they would be interested in signing up to do a hand count. And people were very eager to do that. And I don't go to Fred Meyer's or Cars and wait outside to get people to do that. I work, every day. So I've been going to some political forums and debates. And like I said, people are eager to sign up to count ballots. I'm not telling them they're going to get paid for it. I'm not telling them, I'm telling it's going to be at from 8 o'clock till midnight possibly or longer. But even still, they're anxious to do it because, they don't trust these voting machines. And basically, I think the big concern is, what do we have to hide? I mean, why can't this whole process be done in the open for everybody to witness, to everybody to see, from the gathering of the ballots to the absentee ballots to the early votes? You know, let's make it available to everybody so they can all have confidence in this election. So this is the third sheet that I've given the clerk. I think right now there's over 100 signatures. I got another list started too, so, you know, that isn't all of them. Anyway, the people's sentiment is that they really want this ordinance to pass. They want to get rid of the voting machines, and they're more than willing to help and support for a hand count. So thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you for having this assembly here tonight. I've been a resident out here for more than 40 years. In the old days, we used to feel disenfranchised at the end of a national election because they already knew who won. We sat around here being miserable for days talking about we couldn't do anything about it. We have a chance to do something about it right now. We need to do something about it right now. Because ever since those days I'm talking about, where we did hand ballots, they were developing these machines. They were developing these machines by various interests, government and otherwise. And I'd like to bring the notion forward that they have been generated from a systematic approach called scorecard and hammer that was made to change the votes through software and machines. I'd like to see us go back to paper ballots, use something like Jovan Pulitzer's cheap proof holographic paper and serialized with cameras, although I support this ordinance as written completely as a very good start to undoing what has become a great challenge to understand why our vote doesn't count either 40 years ago or right now. I thank you very much.
Sir, can I have you?
I'd like to submit this.
Yes, and can I have you go back to the mic and state your name, please, for the record? Thank you.
My name is John Leto, Lettow.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Sherry Wilson. I live here in the Valley for over 40 years. I'd like to thank each of you for your service. As a retired engineering data specialist for the oil industry for most of my career, I'd just like to give some foundational information about identifying error in any kind of data. I think we know that these Dominion machines have been used to do criminal things, but I'm a machine person, so I trust the machines more than I do people, because machines don't cheat, people cheat. Just some foundational information about doing counts. The largest publishing firms in the US, when they employ 7 proofreaders on books, they are guaranteed a 3% error. And that's with 7 sets of eyes reviewing documents. So if we want to have a more accurate count on our votes, we should at least, at a minimum, utilize the strongest structure we know, which is like a 3-legged stool or a 3-sided pyramid. That means 3 independent ways in which we count the vote. So the first way we count the vote is when the voter goes in and they register. So we have to sign the registration book. We have to identify ourselves and then sign the book. Then we vote. then the second account occurs with the machine currently. So any machine that does nothing more than tick a count would be important. Then the third way, an independent way, would be the hand count, a visual count. And with that, with three separate ways of counting, we're at a minimum guaranteed a 3% error in that count. So I just want people to be aware of simply having a single person count on votes doesn't necessarily guarantee accuracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. While John's coming, let me just remind everybody, you only get to testify once, okay?
I have some handouts.
And give them to the clerk, please.
Good evening, Assembly members, Madam Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to come up and provide some information for you. A couple of weeks back, my name's Thomas John Nelson. I'm a financial advisor, born and raised in Alaska. I challenged everybody here up on the Assembly to go get the Chewbacca Report, and I would like to see a hand of how many people actually went and read it. Let the record show nobody has. I have presented you with a copy of the Chewbacca Report that was written by Kelly Chewbacca in July of 2020 for the executive branch. This was written by the Department of Administration as a record for the recommendations to fix the election. It's a 38 some odd page report that should be a public document open to all. As we open it up, in the summary, it shows the redacted version of the Chewbacca Report. And all of the recommendations, every single one of them are redacted out. All of them. Every single one of them. What do you got to hide? We do not trust our election system. It's broken. It's a system. If you have a system, let's call it a car, and a wheel is loose, you fix the wheel. Oh, but that's just an anomaly. Oh, but the spark plug's missing. That's just an anomaly. Oh, somebody put a little bit of sugar in the gas. That's just an anomaly. There's no fraud here because nobody's looking for fraud. Me and a team of a bunch of other people have spent over 1,000 hours looking at the data, and every time we look around, we see anomaly after anomaly after anomaly, and they're covering it up. I have some recommendations. Here's my recommendations. Regarding the use of voting machines used to tabulate the elections in the Mat-Su Borough, the following is my recommendations to remove the electronic voting machines, and let the record be shown I've redacted every single piece out of that. We do not trust the voting machines. Go back to paper. That's a simple system that we can have eyes on and that we can control. Thank you for your time.
Hi, Kim Barr. No one's really mentioned the amount of money that we are paying for these machines. I think we should not use these machines, use this money. How about if we pay the police department a little bit more in Wasilla and get them a few more police officers? How about if we pay some more money and get some more bus drivers? You mentioned those items early on, and I think the people that live in this town and this borough would like to see those things happen instead of wasting our money on something that's broken and isn't working and nobody wants. So please consider it as a parent, a grandparent, somebody who lives here. We want the things that are important to us. We want to be able to vote. We want to make sure it's legal, legitimate, and we want to take this money and use it for something good. Thank you.
My name is Will Barron. I was born here in Palmer. I'd like to thank everyone tonight here for listening to us. I fully support this ordinance as written. As a longtime Alaskan, I'd like to say that I'm very proud to have been born here in Palmer. I think Alaska, and particularly the Mat-Su borough, is one of the best places left in the country. I think there's a lot of patriotic people here. I think what we do here matters. Personally, I feel more and more like government is something that's happening to us, not by us or for us. And I feel like if you can't listen to the people here, are they going to listen to us 1,000 miles away, 3,000 miles away? There's a lot of back and forth on the Dominion machines. Are they fraudulent? Are they not fraudulent? We could probably fill days of testimony back and forth on that process. But the reality is there's a lot of people asking you to just listen, to just go back to doing hand count and get rid of the Dominion machine. I don't want the machine. I don't trust the machine. I don't want one fair election cycle with the machine in our area or small area, to echo someone else what they said, to be used as verification that it can be used in some other fraudulent place down the road. Well, look up in Alaska. It was successfully used up there, so it's fine. So based on that, I just think we need to get rid of the machines. More importantly, I'm losing confidence in politicians and politics in general. John, I don't know him. He struck me last time. I was the first time to one of these, I listened to him speak, and he was one of the speakers. I went, wow, he's talking. He's got something to say. I'm going to listen. He asked if you guys read his recommendation. Not a single hand rose. I appreciate your honesty, but if he struck me as credible, why didn't he strike you as credible? I mean, I would want to find out, what is John talking about? Is he crazy? Is he right? Is he listening to the tinfoil hat guys? You got people pleading with you. Listen to us, please. We're not crazy. We work hard. We pay taxes. We just want to pass them on to our kids. And I feel like we're out of touch. I feel like politics in our country is just on a crazy train going over a cliff. And the old adage is, well, go local. Your guys are local. This is as local as we can get. Please, let's start here. Let's set a message to the rest of the country. Let's get rid of Dominion. Maybe it sets a spark and people go back and reevaluate a lot of things. Because when you look at the way Dominion works, you get one error, it goes to adjudication. Adjudication means one person now can start deciding a lot of votes. With ranked choice selection, a lot of times we don't want to vote 3-4 tickets down. We vote one ticket. Does that strike adjudication? Could it be set to be adjudication? I know people in the last election cycle that the machine wouldn't take their votes because they only voted for one. They only circled one thing. So please pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Hi, my name. Hi, my name is Ken Hansen, and I've lived in the Valley since '92, and this is the only event that I've ever come to testify for was voting. I should have gone here many other times and be active. I very much appreciate what Lonnie does, and I do not fully understand how much labor it takes and money to do the vote, but I do not think this is a place where we need to save money. I look at our property taxes and how much we spend on education and how poor the kids are actually doing, bang for the buck. But I think that in terms of what you guys are deciding upon, our votes should not be something where we're really nitpicking on saving money. Maybe Lonnie needs to hire a larger staff for voting, but I think spending money on this is almost the most important thing our money can be spent on is good and fair votes. And I imagine that we could figure out how to do it efficiently. And in the beginning, it's going to be difficult. I do work for General Dynamics. I work in an area where they have cyber groups looking for terrorism and espionage. And I am positive, and I also know John Roberts, who used to work for Anchorage City. He was the IT director, that you guys do not have the staff to properly vet and say that those systems are secure. You don't have that. That would be a lot of money. And so I just encourage you guys, let's keep it simple and work from there. And it's okay to spend money. You have my approval. And thank you for all that you're doing.
Good evening. Thank you for enduring the public. That is your job. My name is Dave Maxwell. I'm from Palmer. I think I have said it many times. I am a whistleblower, state of Alaska. I think it's worthy of saying that because I'm a truth teller. And I don't care if retaliation comes, and it did. So I'll stop there with that. It was a little while ago, Mike Dunleavy was at a meeting, at an AMAC meeting, and I quoted a article from Bob Byrd, who's the Independent Party president. His article was in the Watchman, and it said, the title, "Why Don't People Trust the Government?" That's all I needed to say in that orientation when I was talking to Mike publicly. I said, Mike, the reason they don't trust the government anymore is because people like you lie. Well, Mike Dunleavy had lied to me 2 years prior, promising me a meeting about that whistleblower, that thing I went through. And he never gave me that meeting until that day. Then he said, oh, I'll call you today. And he did. He fulfilled his mission. But here's the point. The point is the people have addressed you a number of times. You're the government. We're the citizens. This is a constitutional republic. If we can't trust you by our request over and over and over again, then what do you propose the next article will be titled? Why can't we trust our government? I challenge you, please allow us to trust you by responding to us and getting rid of these machines. Thank you.
If other people want to testify, you start lining up, please. Go ahead, Dan.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Sense, and I support this resolution wholeheartedly. Somebody else stole my thunder, and he said it well. There should be no cost associated with securing an election. Whatever it takes to get an accurate election, everything else is dependent upon that. If our elections are cost prohibited, or if the securing of the security of election is cost prohibited, then we haven't got a republic. So everything costs money, but to even consider the cost associated with securing an election is wrong thinking in my part. So I just want to say that I support the resolution. The citizens of this valley are going in the right direction, and we believe that you will too. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Tom Brond, and I want to thank all of you for doing what you do. And thank Ron Bernier for bringing this forward. Now, at the end of the last Borough Council meeting, Assemblyman Yunt expressed a view that since we've already spent $72,000 to pay for the November election voting machines, then maybe it would be less wasteful to just use them this last time. I hope I remember that accurately, Assemblyman Yunt. Here's my 2 cents. Spending $72,000 to use the voting machines in November probably didn't seem like a mistake at the time. I don't believe any of the council was trying to make a mistake, but it's done. With all respect to Assemblyman Yunt and the entire council, there are times to cut your losses and run. I believe this is one of them. I want to call it spilled milk. It's gone. So what? I believe vote security is worth far more than $72,000. I have an illustration. In 1970, after quitting smoking for a year, I inadvertently walked out of a candy store with a brand new 75-cent pack of cigarettes. Just conditioned reflex. I realized after the door closed behind me what I had subconsciously done. I thought, well, I already bought them, so I might as well smoke them. 14 years later, in 1984, my hacking and coughing urged me to finally quit forever. 14 years of mistake continue with rising cost of cigarettes until I couldn't stand this slow death anymore. In that time, I'll bet I bought $30,000 in cigarettes. Boy, was I stupid, but it's done. I say we didn't lose $72,000. We just need to discontinue a bad option. If I could possibly give that money back right now to you guys, get you guys off the hook, I would. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about what voters will say. Nothing is perfect. Today, I believe most voters want security more than that money. And if it helps you decide, I would not vote for anybody who votes to use the voting machines again. Please, come what may, burn the machines, take the hit, and for that, I would say thank you very much.
Okay, my name is Steve Renner, and 45 years here in the Valley. I love the Valley. I'm going to call it my home for the rest of my life. And I thank you folks up there for taking the time to listen to us. As I listen to this audience, I have to ask the question, why? Why are these, and I'm going to call them patriots. These are patriots right behind me because they gave up the comforts of their home tonight to come out here and express their concern. Why? I feel it's the issues that these people, myself included, have to deal with in our daily lives. Okay, and these issues, to read a few, are the crime in our communities. We've got a drug explosion going on, and we're coming into Halloween, and we're going to be dealing with fentanyl tablets that look like candy. Okay, and down the list, we've got the price of fuel to heat our homes, to keep our jobs running, going through the roof. This is encroaching big time in the basics of life, food, shelter, and clothing. Inflation is running rampant. It is going to hurt big time this year. We've only seen the beginning of it. We also have a few other issues. We have a failing education system that is no longer an education system, but more so an indoctrination system. The next generation is going to pay for this. And we're already seeing it because we're also dealing with another issue that the judges have been handing down to us. And that is our kids nowadays, a lot of them are having problems figuring out whether they're male or female or which bathroom to go in. And we also know our daughters aren't safe. I'm sorry to have to put it that way. I have no daughters. I have 9 granddaughters. Okay, so my issue is this. That's why we're here tonight. And election integrity is to a constitutional republic is like blood is to the flesh of the human body. Without them, they die. Okay, so what we're here tonight to talk about is a very, very important issue of returning trust into the electoral process, election integrity. And if we take a moment tonight to reflect on the consequences of that not happening, let's think about those people over in Iran tonight that are fighting for their very lives for the principles that we take for granted. They bleed red blood, they hurt, they have families, and they're laying their lives on the line for election integrity. And so I ask, listen to these patriots, and let's move forward in the right direction, and thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Eastman. I'm here to testify in support of the ordinance, but I'm also here to tell you that passing this ordinance will not solve the problem. Sure, it'll make cheating a little bit harder, which I think is a good thing, and it should be harder still. But the reason I'm here, and I think many others are concerned that may be watching online or here tonight, is because we as a community have moved beyond the Dominion voting machines. And changing vendor isn't going to solve the problem, because we have moved beyond a philosophy of elections, which can be summarized as just trust us. That is in the past. I don't believe we'll ever go back there. We have watched in other states, most recently in Georgia, where after many, many repeated assurances that some of the errors in their Dominion voting machines were one-time errors, were not actually as widespread as was thought. Just this last week, I was reading about what's called the Tennessee error, which requires that, well, basically it requires that Dominion voting machines in not just Tennessee, but also in Georgia, be examined and gone back and looked at the errors which are being generated, which they can't explain. But after denying freedom of records requests in many counties, when they were finally able now, almost 2 years later, to get the data, it turns out that the errors that they found in Tennessee were also present in 97% of the counties in Georgia for which data was available. They were told trust us, and it was proven that those individuals could not be trusted. I don't think you can find a single person, no matter how popular they are, no matter if they're sitting in one of the seats right now, no matter if they're an elected official, who we can turn over our elections to, and then the public will be satisfied with just trusting that person. That is not the issue. The issue is one of respect. It's that the public be able to ask questions, like that redacted report that we were just talking about. The legislatures asked for that as well. We also were told, just trust us. You don't need to know what's in it. Some legislators were offered, well, as long as you don't tell anybody what's in it, we'll tell you what's in it. That doesn't fly in a democracy. That doesn't fly in a constitutional republic. That doesn't fly in the Matsu here in 2022. Maybe it did in a prior year, but I can tell you it does not fly now. There will need to be other changes after this ordinance is passed, so that we, as members of the public, on behalf of my family, can know that the process is sound, it is strong, it is accurate, it has integrity. Just trust us isn't going to work. We need to be able to ask our questions. We need to get timely answers. And if we cannot have that level of respect, then solving this ordinance, again, will not solve that problem. Thank you.
I'm Susan Kay. I'm a lifelong Alaskan. Been a long time since I've been in this chamber. I am not in favor of the ordinance. I've worked in many capacities in polling places in all the different ways that Gretchen Orbar would let me. And I can tell you with very certainty that the last election, the very last election, I was a poll watcher at that point, because I think that's really important. So I have served in that capacity, and I take offense when probably none was intended. That's bad on me. But I believe what we did was good, honorable, and accurate and correct. And there were about somebody didn't know if they had already voted, and we could look that up. Yeah, you did turn it in. They were confused, and sometimes we do get confused. And I'm not going to throw out, make a big deal because she came in and honestly asked, and our back channel checks worked. And so I'm not here to argue. I just wanted to let you know that I served in the capacity, and I feel like we did a good job, and that the results were accurate and true from the people who voted. But my concern about having an oversight or an attitude, I think somebody just said we've moved on from Dominion, whatever that on is if we're looking at ugly through ugly eyes, that's not where I'm at. I didn't go there with you. It's hard to say we're all at this, we're all beyond dominion. Because I don't know if I'm on beyond dominion. And it's okay if we get rid of, my question to the board, to assembly, I mean, is if we're going to go to hand counting, I will tell you I have perfect testimony that you could take a hand count, how many people in this room have volunteered to serve in this borough in a capacity on election day or handing out anything. It's hard to get anybody to volunteer, and we're paid, I don't know, $10 or whatever it is, but we're paid to go and help in the poll places. There isn't enough people in this room to count the ballots in my district that we only vote 7%. You know, I'm all worried, how are we going to vote for 10,000 votes in my district? Well, nobody goes to vote, so how hard is it to count to 2,000? But people here need to understand when you vote and you put it in the machine, it's locked. I can't get into that machine. We can push a button, it can tell us how many people voted in and who they voted for. Thank you.
Hello, name's Loy Thurman. Appreciate it, Mayor, Assembly members. Thank you for bringing the things up, the resolutions, and also even the ordinance and everything else here. We've been over this stuff so many times. I'm about ready to bring a cot in because it's, yeah, make this another place to be able to stay at. So we thank you very much for your long bearance and stuff, but we've gone over it so many times. I'm getting competition in the back of the room. We've gone over this so many times. We've shown how much fraud that there is. It is all over the place. I'm not a spring chicken. You know, I didn't get these gray hairs for nothing. So it's been going on for years and years and decades. The fraud has. The only situation that's arisen so much is in 2020, Trump showed the fraud that has been going on and the blatantness of that fraud. I mean, the outrageousness. How do you win? How does a president win whenever all he does is sits in a basement and the crews that he has is just a dinky-doo few, when the other one has thousands and thousands showing up? This is just outrageous. And then the people that are computer experts are saying, man, the fraud of where it has gone and the information going back to China and everything else. And we presented that over and over. The bottom line is, no, we're not going to have that information going to China from here in our little borough. But the portion is, this can be a starting point right here that can begin to change the whole country. And you have that opportunity. I mean, we could get rid of these machines. People say they trust the machine. Excuse me, I'm not talking to Mike. People say you trust the machines. Yeah. But if you put garbage in, garbage out, and you have a computer who can change it and alter it, you're going to get garbage out. And that's what we're getting, is garbage out. And it's been proven over and over. If France can do it for 70 million people of a hand count, we can do it here in our little bitty borough without any problem whatsoever. The reason why that we are in the mess that we are in nationally, all across the board, within our state and everything else, is because these machines and everything else have been altering our votes. You only have to squeeze it just a little bit so that one candidate wins over the other. And by doing this, you cheat and you put the people in that you want, that have liberal mentalities, socialistic concepts, and basically who have no love of our nation and really want to destroy it. And that's the reason we have been fraud, we have been cheated, and what we don't understand is that we are at war with China. This is an information war. It's not so much with bullets, it's ideologies, that we are in a war and we don't even understand we are at war. This is a fight for our nation, and it's close to being able to lose it. I ask you two different points here. Reagan said, oh, I trust. He says, yeah, I trust you, but I'm also going to verify. But the portion is, we don't need, we've already seen enough proof here. The last point is, we have simplified this so much. Just pass it is what it is. I mean, if you don't, I won't say what my sentiments are about you, but I mean, this is as simple as it can get. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. My name is Joel Fuller, 1500 North Landmark, Palmer, Alaska. I want to also stand here in support of the ordinance. At some point, we may go back to machines, an individual machine that is by itself and has data taken off it by the poll workers, and the actual paper ballots are inside of it, probably would not end up being an issue because everything can be verified easily. But right now, there is no trust in the system. I think we need to get away from it, take the break, come back to it at some other point with a different type of a voting system, but not the whole internet tied in voting. I just would support the paper counting of ballots. And you can compare them to, in the future, like I said, we can pull them out and compare them and run enough ballot sets that you find out that it is not a problem with the machines themselves, but the correlation and the correlation of one machine to another in the whole system. But at this time, I would say we need to support the public and reassure them by doing the paper count. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Christopher Kirka from Wasilla. For those of you who don't know me. I'd like to remind the Assembly for the moment to think back about one of the incredible bedrocks of our free society, of our civilization. That we have this principle, this value for a peaceful transition of power that is based on a public confidence in the integrity of our election system, our election process. I've been engaged in politics pretty much my whole life since I was a young teenager, over 20 years. And I've never seen such distrust in the integrity of our election system. So regardless of whether you believe 2020 was hacked, whether it was fraud, the principle, the safety we have, that the public has confidence in our election system is gone. And it's not a partisan issue. For many, many years, those on the left have been raising their voices in great concern with voting machines because it's been demonstrated they can be hacked. It's been demonstrated again and again and again. And we're at a dangerous place in our nation. Because when members of the public stop believing, regardless of the outcome, that their vote is not going to be counted fairly or accurately, the first tendency is to not be engaged anymore in the public peaceful process. And the second tendency is when there is conflict, when there's a problem, instead of pursuing the peaceful means we have to do it through the public process, the tendency, the temptation is going to move towards violence. And that is a scary direction. It is a scary world that we need to avoid. We must preserve the peaceful transition of power that we have in this nation, in this community. And that is done, as a bedrock of that, there has to be confidence in the cleanness of our elections and the integrity of our elections. This measure before you, I don't think goes nearly far enough, but it's a step in the right direction. Having a clear, transparent process for counting and being done at the precinct level avoids the accusation of fraud at a central location, makes it even harder to commit fraud because now you have to corrupt all the precincts, and it's far less likely. We cannot be too careful. Like I said, it's a bipartisan issue. Right now, a majority of Republicans believe 2020 was stolen, and a massive portion of Democrats. It is a bipartisan issue. To that extent, I also have a petition here with me asking not only the Borough Assembly, but the legislature to do away with these Dominion voting machines and go to a hand count at the precinct level. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Harris from Wasilla, and I just want to thank you all assembly members, mayor, manager, for hearing our comments tonight. I'm going to reiterate what I said several months ago regarding the voter turnout, how low it is. As citizens, we pay our taxes, and we pay them heavily. What if the borough only got 7 to 9% of our taxpayer money? I think that the borough would be doing something about that. We should do something about the 7 to 9% voter turnout, or 10%, or 4%, whichever election it happens to be. We as the voters care about our community and our borough. We care about integrity, and we care about our freedoms. And I know that all of you do too. So the example I'm going to use, I've used before. The human heart at 25% can last maybe 6 to 12 months, depending on the condition. You have a code blue here in the borough. It is dying as far as representation is concerned because they have lost trust. And we have a great opportunity to reinstate that trust by going back to tried and true methods. Thank you for your time.
Hi. Hello, my name's Steve Simmons. I was a 20-year resident of the Matanuska Valley. I've been out traveling the world. I ended up in Pennsylvania for a few years, and I got involved in politics down there, or at least the process. I managed to escape right before the 2020 election because I wanted to come back to Alaska. I wanted my vote to count, and I'm in Anchorage now. And I'm not so sure. I'm just like, what the hell? After the previous election with the drop box only, I was just stunned. And I'm losing my faith in the system. I keep in touch with my legislative representative in Pennsylvania just to find out what's going on. There was multiple cases of fraud. They did investigations. There were convictions. There were laws written to correct the issues. I still don't trust them to do the right thing because they want to keep their state blue after that hard fight to turn it for Trump in 2016. So that's all I have to say. I'm losing my faith in the system. I'm really hope that you take the initiative to put the count back so we can begin to build trust in it again. So I endorse this what is it, a resolution? Ordinance, as it's written. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to testify? Okay, Caleb, do we have people? We do not have anybody online. Okay. So one last chance. Anyone that hasn't had a chance to testify that would like to? Okay, seeing no one, still nobody online, Caleb? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. And Assembly Person Rear, would you please move the legislation?
I'd like to introduce ordinance 22-119 and speak to it.
Go ahead.
I'm bringing forth this legislation for my constituents of District 7, as well as many other concerned citizens of the borough. This has been the strongest issue in my short time here. I was elected by the people, and I am their voice. They need to be heard, and their will must be given considerable respect and recognition. I have talked with many people, doctors, pastors, first responders, parents, fellow blue-collar workers, and they all have given me the same answer over and over. They don't have any faith in the machines or the elections. I've asked my fellow assembly members to pass this legislation as written. Let's do the will of the people.
Further discussion by the Assembly? Yes, Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Bernier, I was just wondering on page 4 of 6, where it talks about if it's a hand count precinct, that the votes would be delivered, the ballots would be delivered in containers within 24 hours. That seems like a lot of time. I don't know what it actually is now. It seems like that's a little risky. Couldn't we shorten that up? And I don't know, Lonnie, what is it now? How soon before they get there now?
To Assemblymember McKee, it reads the same right now.
Uh-huh.
So we do have the outlying precincts, Talkeetna, Trapper Creek, Susitna, I want to say Willow, and then Glacier View,
yeah.
who return them the next day.
Uh-huh.
Generally, we have everything before noon, but it gives them time to return them. But that's the way code reads right now, I do believe.
Okay, all right. Are you comfortable with that? Okay.
I am.
Thanks.
And if I could add, we're tracking that to make sure they're coming back. And if afternoon hits and we don't get them, we would start making phone calls, but that has not occurred. We
Okay,
get them.
And then I have another question on that same page. It says, if the precinct is a computer count precinct, there won't be any computer count precincts if this is passed, right?
If it's in bold or not bold, excuse me, capital and in brackets, that means that part of the code is being deleted.
Is being what? I'm sorry.
It's being deleted. If it's capital and in brackets, it means it's being deleted.
Are you
This
looking
is
at?
currently in code.
Yeah.
That's being
Okay.
removed by
All right.
this
Okay.
ordinance.
Great.
We got to show what's currently in and what's
I see what
coming
you're saying.
out.
Yeah, you do. I wanted to just make sure that was there. Thanks.
This is Yunt. May I speak?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I just wanted to tell Ron, thank you for this. You got my full support. I voted at the previous meeting to count at the precinct level this year. I wish we could have done that, but I am glad to hear that we'll be doing it next year and doing away with the machine. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Further discussion by any assembly person? Okay, Stephanie, Assemblyperson Nowers, go ahead.
So a couple questions for the clerk. So these machines are expensive, and that's one thing I would love to see us reduce money on. If we switch to hand count, do we have an estimate of what we would be saving?
Well, we'd definitely be saving the lease. However, I don't know how much, I haven't looked at what we will do sending people out to the precincts, whether we're going to have the election officials count the ballots. So there will be an additional cost in reference to time. I haven't sat down and figured that out yet, though.
Okay, so the additional expense for this election, we have approved doing a full hand recount to check the machines, an additional estimated cost of $7,000. So it might be somewhere upwards of $7,000, but not.
I would guesstimate that. However, I don't know. I want to see how we hand count this year to make my decisions on how we're moving forward.
Okay. Certainly, it's going to be probably cheaper than $70,000.
Yes.
We would be
If
saving.
that's what you're asking me, yes.
Yeah. And then, so if we are counting at the precincts, and I have talked to many people, including some poll workers, and they've talked about the fact that by the time they are done for the day, they've worked a 12-hour day, it's 10 o'clock at night, you're not at your best. Potentially for counting, if we bring in another group, which I know we've talked about doing, how do we deal, like if we have inclement weather or for whatever reason, somebody's car breaks down and they cannot, the next shift that's going to do the count cannot get there. Do we have a way to deal with that? Because we're saying it needs to be counted at the precinct.
At this point, we do not have a plan for that. That's something I would have to come up with. However, with regards to how it's written in this ordinance, if I don't get a count done at the precinct because somebody can't get there, like in Glacier View because the roads are bad or there's been an accident, I am now violating code.
Okay, so we'd have to, like, if we pass this, we're going to have to work on having some kind of procedure in place.
Yeah, I'm going to have to
make
have some
sure
kind of plan.
that we're not dropping the ball.
Yes.
In that way. And then, so these other issues with the state's voters rolls being inflated, with ballots coming to residences that people no longer live at. what can the borough affect that in any way? Do you have any power to affect that?
The only thing I could say is the assembly could definitely create a resolution, send it to the legislature in reference to the process of getting people off the rolls that are no longer here. The rolls right now have, of course, because of the PFD, you have people on the rolls that may have never voted. It does take time, and the Division of Elections has to follow the law in reference to how long it takes to take somebody completely off the rolls. Now, generally in speaking, if somebody leaves Alaska, they go and register in Colorado. Colorado is supposed to notify Alaska because you have that little line, where did you come from? I can't say that that's always done.
Okay.
Because you've got to write down where you were registered before.
Yeah, and those are problems. And then sort of last question, the system right now, we have paper ballots. So if there's a question about the machine count, we have a record. It's not like a touch screen situation where it's just electronic.
That is correct. We've only had paper ballots.
I have some comments, but if anybody else has questions.
Any further discussion from any? Yes, go ahead, sir.
One thing, getting rid of the machines, there's $72,000 that we can put towards doing the count. And I know like those outlying areas, Willow, Talkeetna, Glacier View, they've got 24 hours written in their code on the count and stuff, right? Getting it back to the borough. Wouldn't that have anything to do with bad weather? Well,
that would be true. However, if I'm just, what I was trying to relay earlier, if I can't get a team out there to count, I'm now violating code. We've never had an issue where people haven't been able to return the ballots in time, but these are plans I've got to make, because if, say, election night happens and and it did happen a couple of years ago, I don't have a result for Talkeetna, then people are surmising what could be happening. I try to, of course, get the information out to the assembly and the candidates as soon as I know, but those are the kind of things that can happen.
Yes, Assemblyperson McKee.
So before with machines, when the voting was done, maybe I'm misremembering, but did somebody call in and say, these are the results? That's what I thought. Is there any way, so that we don't have to wait for the 24 hours and before they are actually transported to the borough, is there any way that the people that are counting them out there, is it intended that they will call in and give you their count before they carry them in?
To Assemblymember McKee, my intent, should this legislation pass, is go back to the way we used to do it. And every precinct will call in their results before they bring the supplies back. That way we can get the results out quicker.
Yeah. And I'd like to say something about this. There are some real heroes out in the audience, and some of them aren't here. Brian Endel and CJ Cohn, absolutely, they made it their life work for the past several months. And they took point on this, and I really appreciate that. I also appreciate what John Miller said. The resolution that I initially introduced was I needed a guarantee that it was going to pass, and what I wanted was a hand count. We got that. It was always the plan, and Brian can certainly verify this, that we were going to ultimately move to removing the machines, just so you know. So sometimes the tone that we hear out there is that we are against this. You don't have any idea what's going on in the background. And just as I said, CJ and Brian, amazing people. And they had a lot of really good data, but so did all of you. And so I think we're all heading in the right direction. I think that we started out heading that direction and we're getting there. So thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to approve. Go ahead.
So through the mayor and Assemblymember McKee, I really appreciate that, because, you sit up here and people ascribe all sorts of intention to you. And I think everybody's on the same page as far as believing elections are the most integral thing to our democracy. And just to, people give their stories about where they came from. Well, where I came from is my dad's parents were immigrants. And they came here from Ukraine, and he worked his way up and got into the U.S. Air Force and was at the academy in 1961, 3 years after it happened, and worked his whole military career and raised us to be patriotic Americans and believe in this system, because they saw what happened under the czar. And I have a letter from his dad that he wrote to my dad. And he said in that letter, he said, try not to get cynical about government. It will be hard. Don't get cynical about it. And I think, you know, that comes down to participating and being able to talk to each other. So I believe everybody in this room is a patriot and deeply cares, and in some cases is really concerned, rightly, about where our country's going, and the divisiveness and the inability to work through problems and come up with good systems. So sort of back to the issue at hand that we're looking at tonight, you know, there's 20 plus letters in our packet from people who oppose this, who said, we don't want to see the machines gone. In some cases, they're poll workers. They're concerned about the validity of that. We've had people in the room who said, you know, I think rightly so, that a machine can be rigged, but it's not partisan. It's not going to try to, it doesn't care who wins. So when I look at what procedures we have in place, we need to have systems that are secure, that people can trust, and that catch people cheating, because people will try to cheat in whatever way they do. And I certainly support what Assemblymember Bernier say about cost. I mean, $72,000 is a lot, and it seems like the Dominion machines have a lot of bells and whistles, even though the clerk has reminded us that the ones we have don't have those. But it's kind of like, should we just have a basic calculator, or should we have a T1 graphing calculator? You know, we just need something to count. But I would be concerned, and I had proposed this, that we have a special meeting to go over our election procedures after this election, so we get to see how the hand recount does, and we sit down and we're thorough about it, because I would be concerned that if we can change this, pass this tonight, and then we're going to come back again, and we're going to change it again, and we're going to change it again. At a certain point, I would be concerned that people are going to start to lose faith in us if we're continually changing the system. And just to say that there is no, this is talking about November 2023. So we want to do it right. I don't know what the rush is to not do it right. All these things that you've mentioned and more, we can comprehensively work out at a meeting and have a more comprehensive discussion about it with the clerk there. So
No, no. Audience, please be quiet. Go ahead.
if you allow me, I listened to all this, and I'm trying to say we're all on the same page. I would like the opportunity to be able to sit down with the community when we have the information from the last election, when we can be comprehensive about this and continue this hearing until after that meeting. So I'd like to make a motion to continue this hearing to February 7th. So that would not include the holidays. It would allow us to get the November results. And with the intention of having a special meeting on January 17th to go over all of this in detail.
Okay, the discussion is going to be on continuing the, is it the public hearing or just the discussion?
Continue, I would keep the public hearing open.
Keep the public hearing open on February 7th. Discussion from the assembly. Yes, go ahead, sir.
I'm totally against this. We're here to do business. Let's get it done.
Okay, for the, yes, Assemblyperson McKee.
I appreciate Stephanie's idea that this is so important that we've got to get it right. I'm now going to add the however. There is a time to get it right, but there's a right time to get it done, to just get it done and then iron out the details. I think that the most important thing is, I mean, what we wanted, what we've been aiming for all along is to get rid of the things. Let's do that. And that there are any little glitches that we need to work out, and they won't be big ones, but the little procedural kinds of things, I imagine we'll be working on that for a while because we're making such a big change here. But I'd like to just get her done tonight.
Further discussion by assembly members on the amendment. Go ahead.
I think I've said everything, but I think we can do that and just be comprehensive about it. And again, I'm worried about continuing to tinker and tinker and tinker and people's confidence in the elections. Because like I said, there's some other people who have differences of opinion, and everybody should be on the same page and feel confident about the procedures we have.
Okay. Further discussion by the assembly.
Call the question.
Okay. So any objection to calling the question? To call the question, which would mean to stop debate. Okay. Is there any objection to calling the question, which would stop debate? Okay, hearing no objection, then we're ready to vote, Madam Clerk. So we're now voting on the motion to do the continuation.
Assemblymember Yunt,
No.
it failed with Assemblymember Hill and Nowers in support.
Okay, so now we're back to the main motion. Is there further discussion on the main motion to pass ordinance 22-119? Is there objection?
I'm sorry. I will object. I just don't think it's good to make decisions in a staggered way. So I'm going to be voting against this.
Okay, so there is objection. So we're ready to vote? Okay.
Assemblymember McKee, can I get you to vote on the main motion? The main
Yeah,
motion.
main
Yep.
motion to pass the 22-119.
Assemblymember Yunt,
Yes, ma'am.
it passed with Assemblymember Nowers opposed.
Okay. So Assemblymember Yount, you had proposed a motion that you wanted to do prior to audience participation, but of course we mixed up the agenda and we heard this ordinance first. Do you want to move that motion now, or do you want to wait till all the other public hearings are held?
Yes, ma'am. If it's all right, I'd like to move it now.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I move to schedule a special meeting for 3 p.m. January 17th to discuss borough elections. My reasoning for this is because I do know after passing this tonight, we have some codes to clean up. I think that's something that we can discuss with staff that day. A special meeting is the appropriate way, in my opinion, so that we can take public comment. I think we're going to do a great job, the team and the staff this year on the election, but there may be some areas that where we see improvement, and especially with people that work the elections and everything. So I want them to be able to speak and comment and have an open conversation about areas that we may be able to improve. So, and again, like I said, clean up code. So I think this would be the appropriate time. We'll have all the results back. It's right after the holidays, and I don't want to delay it any longer, so that we can get that all cleaned up as soon as possible. Thank you.
Discussion on Assemblyperson Yount's motion to have this special meeting at 3 p.m. on January 17th, 2023. That's Assemblyperson
Just a
Nowers.
comment, as part of that, as part of that meeting, I would like us to look at reforms at the state level that we could consider pushing for as far as the voter rolls and getting those updated, and also potentially look at if there are other options for machines that are less, would be cheaper and more of like a calculator, and don't have all these other bells and whistles, but are simply a calculator.
Further discussion on the motion?
I agree.
Go ahead, sir.
I agree. I definitely think we need to, the first part Stephanie talked about, not the last part, sorry, that the voter rolls, we absolutely need to clean that up. So I do agree with that we should add that to the agenda that night. I'm comfortable moving forward with just hand counting in the future only. So if we discuss machines that night, that's fine. I don't want it to be on behalf of just this though. So thank you.
Further discussion on the motion? Yes, Assemblyperson Hill, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I do think it's an important, if we don't have faith in our elections, then, we don't have anything. And so I think a special meeting would definitely be in order. I had prepared an amendment here for tonight, talking about giving the clerk the ability to run a machine count verification back like with the review board, do the hand count at the precincts, and then have the review board run it through some type of counting machine. I do think that second layer of protection is important. And it doesn't have to be a Dominion machine. I'd like to see something, something a little more calculator-esque, as Assemblywoman Nowers has said. But, if you count large sums of money, you count it out and you put it in that little machine and you push the button and it goes brrr, clunk, and it counts it too. And I think that double layer of protection is very important, because if your two counts don't match, then, well, you count it again. There's a lot of talk about machines being hackable, and they absolutely are. Machines are hackable, and people are fallible. People are corruptible. So I really think that we should look, when we come to that meeting, we should look at some type of off-brand, whatever, machine that can simply count. So.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion? Yes.
I'd just like to speak to what Tim just said, because I do agree with that. Just a counter, just something that says, okay, this many people voted and we've got this many ballots. I really like that. And there was a lady out in the audience who was talking about the three-legged stool, the one, yeah, you. I'm sorry, and I don't remember your name, but I thought that was a really good idea. We don't want them to tell how you voted or count anything like that. Just like if there were 42 people that came in, there should be 42 ballots. And I don't know how you do that other than I stand there with a calculator. I don't care. But I would feel more comfortable with that. It has nothing to do with anything other than counting the number of votes, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Okay, no, you won't be picked up on the mic, so can you discuss it later? And then
Sure,
you can
sure.
bring it up.
Yeah, but that pretty much conveys my sentiments. I just want to make sure that somebody somewhere, how we, like 5,000 people voted and only 4,000 ballots show up. So if you had a machine that just did nothing else but say click, 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 that I'd be comfortable. How do you feel about that, Ron?
The numbers got to match
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But I think counting them right at the precinct after the election is the best way to go.
Oh, I do too. I just like to have that
I think.
clicker thing. Thank you.
Yeah. Further discussion on the motion? Yes.
Just
somebody-
for the special meeting, I just want to clarify that there would be audience participation so that we could get input from the public at that meeting as well. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
There is always audience participation at any of our meetings. Mhm. Any further, okay, any objection to the motion? Being no objection, then the motion passes. Okay, so we're back to the beginning of the public hearings, are we?
We are. We're on page
Do
3.
you want to take a break?
You want to take a recess?
You want to take a break? Okay, why don't we go ahead and take a break for 10 minutes until 7:50? Assembly people come and take their seat, please.
Hello, everybody. We're going to get started again. I thought I was a little louder than you. Apparently not.
Yeah, I guess. Is people moving? Okay, all right. So, Madam Clerk, I guess we're at the beginning of public hearings now.
We
so-
are.
Okay.
Ordinance 22076, an ordinance repealing MSB 1710 overlay districts. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Is that the staff report, gentlemen, right there? It is. Okay. And I don't has the staff moved in from the other room now? You do? Okay, good.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Okay,
sir.
Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly, I'm Alex Strawn. I'm the Planning Director for the borough. This ordinance is fairly simple. It repeals MSB 17.10, which is overlay districts. This ordinance was adopted in 2018, where the Aviation Advisory Board and the Wolf Lake Aviation Advisory Committee recommended that there be some ordinance in place that advises neighbors when they move into a facility that there is an airport next to them. And I think it was well intended, but when people go to buy new homes, it's not very common, I think, to dive into borough code and try to find whether there's an aviation overlay district. We now have a land use viewer, which has all sorts of zoning regulations and different types of things that people can consider when buying a new home. And the registered FAA airstrips is on that layer. So if somebody wanted to buy a new home and know whether they're next to an airport, they could just simply go to that. The Aviation Advisory Board has since recommended approval of repealing this ordinance as it's no longer needed, as well as the Planning Commission.
Questions from the Assembly to staff? Yes, Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
I do, and it really doesn't have anything to do with the overlay, but I did have a question about Wolf Lake. How do you get to Wolf Lake? When my kids were little, there was a little dock there, not a dock exactly, but there was a place you could go in and you could have access. Is there no longer public access to Wolf Lake?
I do not have the answer to that. I'd have to pull up the parcel viewer and look at.
I wish you would, because that may be a fish and game stocked lake. It was a nice place to go. But I drove around for an hour and a half with my grandkids trying to find how to get in. I said, well, I'll just go down this guy's driveway. Could you find that out? I'm just curious.
Yeah, and it's actually part of an overall, we have a larger project that we've been working on a little bit. And there's been an effort in the past to identify all public access on lakes that are on the road system at least. It hasn't really come up to the forefront, but it is something that I believe that land management just hired somebody that's going to start working on that and working with the planning department to come up with that.
Okay, I'll be looking for you.
This manager says he'll follow up with you also. Okay, thank you. Any further questions to staff? Okay, all right, thank you, sir. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing for ordinance 22-076. And testimony at this time should only deal with that ordinance. Ordinance number 22-076, an ordinance of repealing MSB 17.10 overlay districts. Anyone is welcome to testify. Do we have anybody online, Caleb? We do not. So seeing no one come forth, last minute call? Oh. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-076. And I would say this is just effectively a dead letter and we should repeal it.
Okay, discussion. You still have your mic on, is that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I'm in favor of repealing anything that doesn't need to be there. Any red tape, anything that slows us down, that truly doesn't be there.
Thank you. Yes, Assembly Person Hours, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that this overlay district was one of the first things that came before me when I was an assembly member, and the original route we were going to do to notify people was to send out a bunch of letters at a lot of expense to the borough, and that was one of the first things I voted against. And then I'm just super happy to see that staff has come up with a solution, a much cheaper, easier way for people to know. I think the intent of this was to let people know you're near an airport, so they don't move into areas and then start to complain about I'm next to an airport. So this is a just great technological, easy solution and at a good cost.
Further discussion? Any objection to this ordinance passing? Don't see any objection. Hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 22-106, an ordinance amending MSB 1539-070, compensation and reimbursement for the Board of Adjustment Appeals to be equal with the increase adopted with the fiscal year 2023. And Madam Mayor, I will give the report on this. So last year, the Planning Commission and Plating Board, their meeting wage got raised to $100. So the Board of Adjustment Appeals is the board that hears the appeals from those boards. So in the budget this last budget, I went ahead and budgeted for $100 for also the BOAA. This is just the code change following that $100.
Okay, questions to staff? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing for ordinance 22-106. Anyone like to testify on this ordinance? We have anybody online, sir? Okay, seeing no one, I will go ahead and close the public hearing on ordinance 22-106. Deputy Mayor.
I move to adopt ordinance 22-106.
Discussion? Any objection? Seeing no objection, the legislation passes. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 22-107, an ordinance reappropriating $50,000 from the Census Project account to Recreation Services operating budget and authorizing the conversion of 4 on-call water safety instructor positions into 2 full-time water safety instructor positions. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Go ahead, sir.
Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly, Hugh Leslie, Parks, Recreation, and Library Services Manager for the Mat-Su Borough. The legislation in front of you has a pretty strong summary statement as to why we are proposing adding these positions. Much like the rest of the country, we are struggling keeping and retaining staff people. And many of the people who we get to hire as water safety instructors are at a very transient age in their life. Many are just out of high school or just a year or two into college. And so we make the large investment into training them and getting them to learn to teach, and then life takes them on to bigger and better things, hopefully. It's our intention, by converting 4 of these positions into 2 full-time positions, it will be more attractive to hire long-term staff.
Questions to staff from the Assembly? Okay, seeing none, thank you, sir. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 22-107. Anyone that would like to testify on this ordinance? Caleb, do we have anybody online? We do not. Anyone like to testify? Okay, I'll close the public hearing then on ordinance 22-107. Deputy Mayor.
I move to adopt ordinance 22-107. And I suppose this comes at the request of my wife, who told me that her and her friends had, and actually I guess a lot of people have been complaining that when the borough opens swim lessons, there's something like 50 slots and 450 applicants. It closes in 10 minutes. So we have these nice new pools, and we're coming nowhere near filling the demand for swim lessons. And we live in a place with a lot of bodies of water. Drowning fatalities are unfortunately not uncommon. And so while I don't like to add full-time positions, I do think that this is justified, just simply because the demand exists and, you know, we're under serving that demand. So I encourage everyone to vote yes on this. Oh, and the money's coming from leftover money from the census project, at least for this year.
Further discussion? Yes, Assemblyperson Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank Assemblymember Sumner for bringing this. This is something important that we can do to help meet that need and to help teach our kids how to swim and not drown when they fall in the water. I just also want to bring up that the YMCA has sent us a request to use the pool during closed times in order to offer swim lessons and partner with the borough on meeting that need even more. So hopefully we can come to some sort of agreement with the YMCA and we'll have these full-time positions, but we'll also have a good partner from the nonprofit sector to help us with this problem. So thank you.
Further discussion?
Just say it's
Assemblyperson Hours?
a parent who did the old system where you had to stand in line and hope you could get in. If this helps parents get into lessons, this is a great thing because it can be a real challenge to get your kids in. So thank you.
Further discussion? Any objection to the legislation? Seeing and hearing none, the legislation passes. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 22-108, an ordinance accepting and appropriating a grant in the amount of $40,000 from the Alaska State Department of Health and Social Services to allow for the implementation and management of points of dispensing and medical countermeasures. With accompanying resolution 22088, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget for a grant in the amount of $40,000 from the Alaska State Department of Health and Social Services for the implementation and management of points of dispensing and medical countermeasures.
Through the mayor to the assembly, Cheyenne Heindel, finance director. Before you is accept and appropriate for $40,000 that will allow us to set up dispensations points. Mostly this grant will pay for wages and benefits related to that and the related supplies.
Questions to staff?
I would just like to,
Yes.
whoops,
go ahead.
very briefly. Is this like the Narcan thing and things like that?
Through the mayor to Assemblymember McKee, no, that is not like the Narcan.
Okay.
This is probably more like what you saw with COVID, with the vaccinations and flu vaccinations and that
Okay.
stuff.
Thanks very much.
Okay. I don't see anything more. Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 22-108 and resolution 22-088. Anyone that would like to testify on this ordinance and this resolution? Caleb, do we have anybody online? We do not. Okay, so I'll close the public hearing. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-108 and resolution 22-088.
Discussion by the assembly. Any objections to the ordinance and resolution passing? Seeing no objection, the legislation passes. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 22-109, an ordinance approving an appropriation of $1,650,000 from the Central Mount Sioux Fire Service Area Fund Balance to purchase two new rescue engines with accompanying resolution 22084, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget for a project to purchase two new rescue engines for Central Mount Sioux Fire Service Area. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Okay, staff report, sir, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, Manager, and Assembly. Ken Barkley, Director of Emergency Services. So in the current budget we're in now for the rescue engine was approved at $875,000. During that time, the vehicle's gone up. It's just over 1.3 million for the vehicle. So we went ahead and through the purchasing, through the source well, which goes out to bid for all of our equipment, that's where the price came back at. So what we're doing is we talked to the vendor, and they offered us a deal where if we purchase two of them because right now they're 460 days out to get apparatus. So that will put us way behind. If we order 2 of them, they'll give us $100,000 off. So that also includes 2 times for 2 people to go down and inspect the trucks as they're being built. It also comes with the warranty as well. So what we did was we put that together. We went in front of the fire service area board and we presented that option to them, and they approved that unanimously. So what we're asking to do is to purchase 2 of them. If we don't do that now, then it could be a delay of 2 years before we can get the second one. These are rescue engines. They have all the fire equipment on them, and then they also have the rescue equipment that does our auto extrication, over the embankment rescues. So it's a dual purpose truck. That's what we're going to now. The other thing that was asked of us, asked of me probably about 1.5 years ago, was to start standardizing our equipment. And that's what this also is part of doing. We've already have a few of these trucks on the road now, and we're continuing that and standardizing our equipment. By doing dual purpose trucks, it also eliminates more traffic that we have on the road. Anytime we're running lights and sirens, we present a risk out there. So this is a dual purpose truck, and it covers two options, 2 jobs for us that we handle. So that's why we're trying to purchase both of them at the same time.
Questions from the assembly to staff? Yes, Assemblyperson McKee.
Hate to be so chatty tonight, but I had a meeting with Ken and Ryan of the, whatever you call it, your department, what's it called? Safety.
Emergency
Yeah.
services.
I was amazed. I went in ready to, with both guns blazing. I was thinking $1,065,000, whatever that thing is, people are going to go freak about that. And I kind of was. But after talking to these guys, they had it all laid out. They've got a shop that can do repair through overhaul, which is amazing. And we were looking at a couple of, George McKee, who was here tonight and was involved in this before, we had seen some heavy rescue machines, but we, over at, I think it's EGM, they're not the same thing that you guys are looking at. So that was another real surprise. So I just got to tell you, I was delightfully surprised and really pleased that you sat down and spoke to me to kind of clear up my misconceptions. And it sounds to me like you're doing all the right stuff. And that standardization of the equipment, what else? That's a really good idea. So
Thank you,
thanks.
Assemblymember McKee.
Yeah.
Any further questions of staff? Okay, thank you, sir. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 22-109 and resolution 22-084. And Mr. McKee, you've signed up to testify.
I was on the Borough Assembly for 6 years. And I dealt with this issue of equipment. Prior to that, for 5 years, I dealt with the fire department, emergency services in the Fairbanks North Star Borough. Okay, so I know a little bit about this. I talked to the previous director of the emergency services about the number of equipment that they had. He said they were over-equipped. He was looking at doing a fire sale. These folks out here are not a municipal firefighting department. They're somewhere a cross between a rural volunteer group and a small town fire department, okay? There's a limited amount of equipment that you need. I would urge the assembly to get a report on how many miles you have on each one of all the equipment that you have. And I would also like to know how many people died in the last 365 days because you didn't have these 2 fire trucks. Okay? That's facetious, I know. But what I am dealing with is there has to be need. Yeah, when you have one director says you should have a fire sale on equipment and you have another buying the stuff right and left, okay, maybe you ought to look at what's happening a little bit here. We're not a major municipal fire service area. We're not. We bought a truck here that could go up 4 stories. We only have 1 4-story building in the whole Matsu Borough. That's a hospital, okay? that, by the way, was what, $1.5 million, I think? So the idea is, now I would end with this. In dealing with the emergency services people in the Matsu Borough and those in the Fairbanks area, I found they have one similarity, okay? They love toys as long as they don't have to pay for them, okay? And if you gave every emergency services person in the Matsu Borough their own fire truck or ambulance, they would want 2 of them in case one of them quit, okay? They don't need this equipment.
Would anyone else like to testify on ordinance 22-109 or resolution 22-084? We have anybody online, Caleb? No? Okay. Seeing none and hearing none, Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-109 and resolution 22-084. And I'd move to postpone ordinance 22-109 to the next meeting to be accompanied with a full accounting of all equipment held by Matsu Central and the mileage on it.
Okay. And so your motion is just to postpone the ordinance, but not the resolution. Is that correct, sir? Did I hear that correctly?
Oh, and the resolution.
And the resolution? Okay, so both of them? Okay. So there is a motion to postpone to the next meeting on the 18th of October. Discussion on that motion. Yes, Assemblyperson McKee.
I'd only like to say that if inflation is going up as much as it has, as quickly as it has, if we're not going to go beyond October, right? Sometime in October? That it's going to come that soon, this report that Jesse's talking about? Yeah?
It will be on our next agenda.
great.
It'll be up to all of you whether what happens.
Yeah,
to
okay.
it.
I just wanted to make sure of the date that it wasn't like in March or something. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's not March, it's October 18th, which is 2 weeks from tonight. Yeah.
This is Assemblyman Yunt, Mayor.
Go ahead, sir.
In all fairness, I think we should ask Mr. Barkley if he thinks that's a reasonable timeline to create that
Okay.
list of equipment.
He's coming to the podium.
Through the mayor to
Mhm.
Assemblymember Yunt. What I can tell you is I can get you that list, but the vehicles that these are replacing have 70 and 80,000 miles on them. One of them has been out of service since May. We cannot get the parts for it. This is replacing a 1999 engine, and that one will go to auction because we can't use it no more. And the other one will we'll use it for wildland firefighting only, which means it goes on the state list. So any wildland fire, it can be deployed and used there, which brings back revenue for us. These have extremely high miles for emergency vehicles, and the maintenance history is extensive. These vehicles are in the shop so much lately, and we cannot get parts for them. So right now, we are down those vehicles. So that was the urgency. Whether we can honor that $100,000, that I don't know at that time. I don't know what the deadline was for that.
Okay. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so to the assembly then, one other thing I wanted to add, is kind of an adage as we talk about this a little bit. And I want to remind folks, I think it's very easy to look at this and go, well, my vehicle at home has more than 75,000 miles on it. And I want to remind folks, we're talking about emergency first responder vehicles. So there is an element of making sure it doesn't break down often or on the way to a call. Because as you know, our fire service areas, we don't share equipment across 8 different fire departments, right? They each have to stand on their own to some degree, and we have mutual aid agreements and that assist. But the reality is, from a governmental structure perspective, they have to stand on their own, right? So I was talking to a firefighter or an individual who's with the Anchorage Fire Department. And I'll share with you kind of what Anchorage did. So they were in the process of buying 2 similar vehicles. They bonded for it. So bonding means they took on debt to buy 2 fire trucks. That is not what we're doing here. So we're looking at how do we generate the balances to forward fund these things and pay for them as we need them. And secondly, since Anchorage did that, turns out that inflation and the cost of the vehicles went up so much that what they bonded for now doesn't actually buy the trucks. So now they're in a situation where they've got to raise additional funding to do this. So, when I look at capital planning and you lay some of this stuff out over time, there's an element to hitting your marks and not falling behind. And it's not being wasteful or spending money in advance of needing it. It's just, it is very difficult for these fire service areas to generate the revenues to have spikes in funding to support large equipment purchases. It just isn't helpful to fall behind. So that's kind of what we're looking at here and going, we want a sustainable structure that doesn't create peaks and valleys from a budgeting and revenue perspective. And it, kind of to Mr. McKee's point, it's very difficult to say somebody's going to lose their life because we don't have this truck. Because the reality is with, ambulances, fire trucks, rescue. I mean, I appreciate his comment about the aerial or the ladder truck. Just for the record, because I think it's important. Yes, we bought a truck specifically for Matsu Regional Hospital that was bought through a grant specifically to enable us to have a firefighting capability for the only hospital in the Matsu Borough. So yeah, did we do that? Absolutely. And as a condition of that grant, that truck stays at Station 5-1 just down from the hospital. So there has to be provision for those things if we're going to have infrastructure. And although I agree we have rural fire departments, when you look at the city of Wasilla and this discussion around having new hotels, and I wish Mayor Ledford were still here, like you have to have those apparatus to be able to deal with the infrastructure that people want to come in and develop within the cities or within the borough at large. Because I think it's fair that any business that's wanting to locate there, and we just had an interesting dialogue with the Wasilla Chamber today as all of our House candidates had to have those conversations around infrastructure development and realizing that if you want that economic development, you have to have the infrastructure for them to get the insurance policies, to have the adequate risk, to do all of those things. And that is what's happening out here. When we talk about growth, we're not talking about just population. We're talking about infrastructure. We're talking about businesses. And we have to keep pace with our responsibilities to provide those services. I'll stop there. Sorry.
So the motion before us is to postpone. Further discussion on the motion to postpone. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Assemblyperson Hours and then Deputy Mayor.
So it sounds like
Oh,
you're saying,
and Tim Hale, I'm sorry.
sounds like you're saying you think it'd be a bad idea for us to postpone for 2 weeks, that we shouldn't be moving forward.
Through the mayor, to clarify, I'm not opposed to that. But I will remind the Assembly, we did this inventory or this equipment about a little over a year ago when this came up last time. So we'll pull that list off, make sure it's updated, and we'll send it out to you again. But we have that list. It's not something we have to go and create. It's something we already have. So if you want to postpone it until the next meeting, I cannot give you a good reason not to do that.
One quick follow-up question. Is it going to cost us any extra money to postpone for 2 weeks? Are we going to be in a situation where 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there on cost for?
I don't imagine 2 weeks is going to change the calculus here.
Okay, Deputy Mayor and then Tim.
So I think the manager's comments are well taken, and I appreciate that, we do need to make those investments in order to facilitate, growth, continuing growth in the Matsu Borough. I just have a slight concern, and we have an oversight responsibility. Originally we were asked to purchase one for 800 and some odd thousand, and now we're spending 3 times as much for 2. So I think that taking an extra 2 weeks, and doing our basic oversight and due diligence, just like, we had that list last time. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't. And if the price changes substantially in 2 weeks, well, that's not just inflation, that's hyperinflation. And I don't think we're quite there yet. So, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, and I think that's fair. Like, I'm not suggesting you can't postpone it for 2 weeks. I was just trying to kind of explain some of the rationale, really for the public more than anything, about how do we get to these things. The reality is you're going to have another ordinance that gets introduced for next meeting anyway for a pumper tender for West Lakes. So we're going to be talking about this in 2 weeks, one way or the other.
Assemblyperson Hale. Go ahead, sir. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to point out that this is Central Matsu Fire Service Area money, and that the Central Matsu Fire Service Area Board unanimously recommended it. And that is their job, is to make recommendations to us about what they should spend their money on. So I'm gonna say, let's just get this done. We can look at the list later.
Okay, Assemblyperson McKee.
Would it be possible to contact these folks that are going to let us have this $100,000 savings on them and say, well, you know, we probably going to head in the right direction here, but would 2 weeks screw that up? Can you get them? Could you contact them? Would that be?
Through the mayor, Senator McKee, absolutely.
Oh, good.
We
Thanks.
can get a hold of them, yes.
Thanks.
Further discussion on the motion to postpone. Is there objection to the motion? We do have objection to the motion to postpone. Madam Clerk.
Assemblymember Bernier, if I can get you to vote. Thank you. Assemblymember Yunt.
Yes.
It passed with Assemblymember Hale opposed.
Okay. So then we're ready for. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 22-114, an ordinance accepting and appropriating $1 million from the Alaska State Department of Commerce Community and Economic Development for the 2024 Arctic Winter Games, with accompanying resolution 22091, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget and authorizing the borough manager to enter into a grant agreement for the 2024 Arctic Winter Games. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Staff, please.
Through the mayor to the assembly, Cheyenne Handel, Finance Director. This $1 million grant was in the state's fiscal year 23 budget, and we are asking you to accept and appropriate so we can send it on to Arctic Winter Games to help their funding.
Questions from the assembly to staff? Okay, I will go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 22-114 and resolution 22-091. Do you think you have a sign-up sheet? We do not. Okay. Is there anyone that would like to testify on this ordinance and this resolution? And we do not have anybody online, so I'll close the public hearing. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-114 and resolution 22-091.
Discussion from the assembly. Yes, Assemblyperson Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say I hope we have a great games and we bring in all kinds of tourists and teams and everything else, and we just really showcase the qualities of the Matsu Borough.
Further discussion. Is there any objection to the legislation? Okay, hearing no objection, the legislation passes.
Ordinance 22-115, an ordinance accepting and appropriating $179,795.39 from the Alaska State Department of Commerce, Community and Economic Development for the maintenance of seasonally impassable roads in the Big Lake area for fiscal year 2023, with accompanying resolution 22092, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget and authorizing the borough manager to enter into the grant agreement for the maintenance of seasonally impassable roads in the Big Lake area for fiscal year 2023. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Yeah, through the mayor to the assembly. So this one's a pretty easy one. The assembly passed a resolution some time ago to authorize us to go to the legislature and seek a reappropriation for this funding for use in RSA 21. So that's what we did. It was reappropriated. This is the grant agreement that allows us to accept and appropriate approximately $180,000 for use in the Big Lake area.
Any questions from the assembly to staff? Okay, seeing none, then I will go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 22-115 and resolution 22-092. Is there anyone that would like to testify? Do we have anybody online? We do not. Okay. So I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and Assembly Person 2.
I move to adopt ordinance 22-115 and resolution 22-092.
Discussion by the Assembly. Any objection to the legislation? Hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 22-116, an ordinance accepting and appropriating $30 million from the Alaska State Department of Commerce, Community and Economic Development, and appropriating $13,239,792 from the area-wide fund balance for the 2021 Transportation Infrastructure Package with accompanying resolution 22093, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget and authorizing the borough manager to enter into the grant agreement for the 2021 Transportation Infrastructure Package. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Go ahead, sir.
Through the mayor to the assembly, Cheyenne Heindel, Finance Director. This is part, again, of the state's operating budget or capital budget that was approved for fiscal year 23. This 30 million matches our local contributions to the Transportation 21 package. In addition to that, to round out that match, we also put in $239,792 in fund balance to come up to the total $60 million match.
Questions to staff. Go ahead. Sir.
Yeah, if I may, through the mayor to the assembly. So I want to pump the brakes for a second here. So this ordinance, if passed, fully funds the TIP 21 $61.1 million transportation package without any debt. Okay, so that has never happened before out here with the borough. So hats off to the assembly for your commitment and staying the course with this. I think it is a great illustration of how we can work with the state with matching funds. I heard some more of that with our State House candidates at their forum today. I think it is a great way to move forward where the locals step up and do a piece, the state steps up and does a piece of it, and we're moving forward. So this $61.1 million transportation package, it does not appear at this point the borough will be, that we will be bringing any legislation forward to the assembly to sell any bond debt for that transportation package. Now, I'm going to segue into the second part of that. The resolution on the consent agenda tonight, because I didn't speak to it, it's not going to get pulled, it doesn't look like, is a resolution for you to direct staff to go pursue a TIP 23 package. So basically, now that this is fully funded, staff will be moving forward these projects to get them to construction here in the near future. TIP 23 would allow us staff the next several months through a public process to develop another package for assembly consideration in the springtime that then, if you saw fit to do so, could put it before voters in the fall of next year. So it gives us plenty of time to kind of develop that. I think that package would have more, it would allow us to address some of the school access issues we've been talking about. And it would also be focused more on maintaining existing infrastructure, such as pavement preservation projects and things along those lines. So that's what that resolution, we coupled those kind of intentionally so you can look at it and say, all right, now that we've got this funded and staff are moving these projects, we'll start looking to the future for another round. So I just wanted to kind of tie those two together for you and give you kudos for seeing this through. I think this is a great example.
Questions from the assembly to staff? Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 22-116 and resolution 22-093. Is there anyone that would like to testify on either one of these? Caleb, we do not. Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing then. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-116 and resolution 22-093.
Okay, discussion. Yes, Assemblyperson Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through the mayor to the manager. You did such a good job with this last bond package that I'm going to ask you to see if we can get some money to build the pathway along Palmer Fish Hook.
Further, Assemblyperson Howard.
First of all, I really like the mayor's train whistle. Yeah, this is a this is really neat to be able to do this, debt-free, and we're so far behind on our roads, can make a big difference. It would be great to kind of, as we are able to complete those projects, maybe package that and show it back to the legislative delegation and the governor, and maybe with a, bouquet of flowers or something. But thanks again. It's really a needed thing to get these roads done here. So appreciate all the effort that's gone into this and excited to see these come forward.
Further discussion? Is there any objection to the legislation passing? Hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Woo! Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Ordinance 22117, an ordinance accepting and appropriating $250,000 from the Alaska State Department of Military and Veterans Affairs Emergency Management Performance Grant Program and requesting a reappropriation of $250,000 from the Emergency Management Fiscal Year 2023 operating budget for emergency management wages and benefits. With accompanying resolution 22095, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget for a grant in the amount of $250,000 from the Alaska State Department of Military and Veterans Affairs Emergency Management Performance Grant for emergency management wages and benefits.
Staff?
Through the mayor to the assembly, Cheyenne Heindel, Finance Director. Last time you get to hear from me tonight. This grant is a grant we've gotten several years in the past. It basically pays for the wages and benefits for our emergency management staff. And if you have worked with Casey, you know that this is, while we budget for his wages in our operating budget, this offsets those.
Questions from the assembly to staff? Yes. Deputy or
I read this thing
Assembly
twice,
President?
and I don't know what these folks do. What does this mean? I 250,000. I need to know what they do.
Ken might be better able to explain what they do, but they do run our emergency management program.
Okay, and that means Ken's going to tell us that part.
Good evening, through the
Thanks.
mayor, to Assemblymember McKee. Good question. So these folks are ones that run our natural disasters, our windstorms, flooding, and that's our staff. And this is what helps pay their salaries. So that's what staffs our EOC during an emergency.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
And if I may, through the mayor, these staff also do emergency preparedness. So like when we talk about the Emergency Preparedness Expo and things like that, this is the staff that does that. It's kind of an interesting model. We forward fund it in the budget, and then we get grants that end up paying us back for that. So, generally it's fairly sustainable because the state has generally come through with that. So that kind of works because it's a way to get some of that state money infused and allow us to move forward a program that we already have the responsibility to move forward. So.
Further questions to staff? Okay, so I will go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 22-117 and resolution 22-095. Is there anyone that would like to testify on this piece of legislation? Caleb, do we have anybody online? We do not. Okay, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-117 and resolution 22-095.
Discussion by the assembly. Any objection to the legislation? Hearing none, the legislation passes. Okay, so I guess we're now to audience participation. We are now to audience participation. And I'm going to recognize Elsie because she had signed up for the public hearing and realized that she had the wrong, she wanted to speak here. So I'm going to recognize her first and then I'll go to the rest.
Hi, I'm Elsie O'Brien. I now live in Wasilla. I lived in Houston for over 30 years. I was hired as the city clerk of Houston the early part of July in 1979 and quickly learned that my first duty was to run the election coming up in October. I got in touch with Erling Nelson, who was the city clerk of Wasilla, and said, tell me what to do to keep me out of jail. And thankfully he did. And I just want to make a couple of, I deliberately signed up after you all made your decision on the election code because I want to reflect observations that I saw and respond to some of your concerns. before I go any further, I want to show a little bit of a chastisement out to you. I'm a little bit concerned, very concerned, that you seem to be not ready to trust the people more than you do the machines. You hadn't even gotten your finger off the button yet to vote when you said, okay, now what are we going to do about getting another machine to cross-check the people? That doesn't make sense. Another thing I want to caution you on is be aware that your clerk is legally responsible to manage the election as a whole. You know, your input into the ordinance, of course, is what you need to do. But when it comes to these work sessions and how we're going to do this, all the details, be very, very careful you don't get into her territory and tread on her feet. This is her baby from now on out. And as far as some of your concerns about the fatigue of the election workers, the transportation of the ballots for the big distances we have, I believe that the latest that our crew stayed on counting the election and transporting the ballots that night to the borough building from Houston was 3:30 a.m. And this came after the system back then, and probably should be again, is that you have the tally marks. You have a team of 2 poll workers sitting next to each other. You have the recording thing, and every 5 votes, you holler out, you say tally. If you don't tally, you go back to the point you did not tally and start all over again. And as far as the machines, frankly, in my time, we didn't have them. And we managed extremely well. The people came out and they voted. The poll workers showed up when they should show up. They did the count they needed to count. And it was a cross-counting process that no matter how you're intrigued with the machine, you cannot account for them any better than 2 people. And if those 2 people got too tired, you traded in some others. So it's something that you need to learn to trust the people. Somewhere along the line, you got into the habit, and the nation as a whole has gotten into the habit of saying, "Oh, but we need to have the machines check the people." No, trust the people. And as far as I remember, one of the speakers talked about the cost of the machines you'd already spent. And I thought of the fact that you bought a fire truck and the motor was backward. Would you keep it and use it anyway? No, you wouldn't. Listen to the people that spoke to you tonight, and as I understand it, for months ahead of time. And yeah, you could be a good role model for the rest of the nation, but let your clerk do her job. Let the people do their job of watching the election. But it is a very, very critical step you took tonight, and thank you.
Donna?
Good evening. My name is Donna DeFusco. The state of Alaska is the owner of RS-2477 easements. Permission must be requested and given to an entity like the borough that wants to develop in the easements. The state is required to notify property owners in order for them to voice objections and submit appeals. In May 2021, the Assembly approved the borough budget, which included the line item for the Burma Road Underpass project. I didn't know the project had been proposed and funded because I had not been contacted by the state. Why? Because the borough had not requested use permission from the state. June 2021, the project was put out for bid. I had not been contacted because the borough had not sought permission from the state. July 2021, the borough selected a contractor for the project. Property owners still had not been contacted by the state because the borough had still not requested the authorization. August 2021, the borough arranged a public meeting with the Connect Fairview Community Council. The meeting was to tell property owners that the project was going to take place and a project that had already been approved, funded, and scheduled by the borough. Point in fact, my property and Burma Road are in the Big Lake Community Council boundaries. So why was this borough meeting held in the Connect Fairview Community Council when it was not in their purview to make any decision or have any discussion about my property? In August, I came before the Assembly on 3 different occasions to voice my objections and to let you know the borough had not done their due diligence. As of the end of August, the borough still had not requested authorization from the state. September 3rd, the borough sent the letter to the state DNR requesting the permission. Before September 20th, the borough had already cleared the acreage of the vegetation. The permission letter from the state was not written until September 23rd. And yet the private property destruction that had already taken place was significant. And before the appeal process was even opened, that was wrong. Some borough staff members must have been sweating profusely until they got that letter from the state. But I don't think they read it very well, because on page 2, the state very clearly says, and I quote, "This letter authorizes the development of a public easement for transportation purposes only and does not constitute authorization for the placement of utilities or other improvements within the easement." End of quote. The state did not give the borough permission to build a recreation structure. In fact, the state did not mention recreation anywhere in their letter. Did the Matsu Borough deceive the state with their original request? The state seems to be under the assumption the borough was building a transportation project, not the recreation project that 5 of you voted for. Citizens in the borough and the state need to be on notice of the deceptive practices of the state and the borough in the illegal taking of private property for recreation use. Thank you.
And on some of these, it talks about vote counting, so some of these people may not still be here. John Leto, you here? No. And Cherie, I know, is gone. Ben Hute, what do you think that is?
Hutiling?
Utiling? Ben? Richard Stoffel, I know, is gone. Tom Witzkoff?
I would like to let my wife go first.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cecilia, yeah, she may, certainly may.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm hoping this helps our situation. This has been going on for 3 years. It's a code compliance problem. To us, it's a very big one. We live on over 3 acres of land, and next to us is a 2.74 acre plot. We do have a case number. It's 11570. We live in Glen Haven subdivision. The property next to us is Lot 8, Block 1, 9901 Saloma Court. And it started 3 years ago. And we were in bed. And now we're used to their cars roaring at night and stuff. They're up, it seems, late every night. But this night, it was a different, bigger noise. And it was, my husband got up at 11 something at night, went out there, and here's this dump thing pulling up dirt, making a big, big hole. So my husband went out there and he's like, "Hey man, it's 11 something at night. What the heck are you doing?" Well, he said he was clearing it out to put rocks in or something. I forget. But wasn't the case. And he kept, and my husband said, "You need to be quiet. It's too late at night." He didn't stop. So we did call the police. And they came out, they said, "Well, this isn't really our department, this is the borough." And of course, it's not the borough's problem. They are peacemakers. They did get the guy to stop making this big hole. Anyway, but the next day, the guy was out there again. And now it's daylight. So I'm out there because we were told to get pictures or we wouldn't have a case. So I went out there. My husband wasn't home at the time. I went out there with my little Pomeranian and my camera, and I'm taking a picture. And he's dumping all these car parts, freezers, blah, 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 into this big hole. Well, he sees me. And I'm on my property. They are making this hole right on my property line. So I got all these pictures. It was great. We got all our pictures. We came into the borough. They were like, cool, this is going to be good. You know, are you willing to go to court? Because a lot of people, they're not willing to go to court. Yes, we're willing to go to court. Anyway, there was a girl that came out, and she was a code and compliance, and she got these guys to start, oh, well, she saw where they were digging a hole, but they had buried it. Oh, darn. But they buried it. Here's my husband.
They buried the garbage. Oh, I'm Tom Wistoff. They had buried all of their garbage and stuff. And Kendra was the compliance officer, came out and had them start moving their junk vehicles. They had like 80 of them on their property. And it was going pretty good for a while. Then all of a sudden it just stopped. And then COVID hit. So no court, no nothing. Now they're back up to 75, 80 vehicles or more on their property. And the hole they dug and buried stuff is starting to bring water into our property that has oil in it and stuff on the groundwater. I have talked to you, Edna, and I've talked to you, Moki, about it. We're at our wit's end. It's been going on for years, and we just need something to be done. I've got pictures here of what this looks like. And supposedly Matt told me that Mr. Spiropoulos did not want to file an injunction. How would you like to live by it? And smell has quite disgusting. We're hitting almost 70 now. And if we pass away, our children will sell that land for pennies on the dollar, because anybody that comes down there and turns around that cul-de-sac, they're like hightailing it out, except for the traffic that is constant going up into their yard. It's not any good. Something needs to be done about it and get those people moved. I don't know what Kendra did to get them to move those vehicles, but Matt is not getting them to move. He's given them 6 citations. They're still hanging on their gate of their driveway. They just ignore them. So, and maybe you could think about attaching PFDs to these people when they do this, and you got to go in and get out all these vehicles, start attaching PFDs and taking their money away from them. That might get them rolling. They have not had garbage pickup. They do not burn their garbage, and they do not make any dump runs in the last 5 or 6 years. There's trailers stacked full of garbage, and there's piles of garbage here, there, and everywhere on their property. And we we've tried to help them except for the last, when this started, but prior to that, we've helped them for 3 years with things like firewood and bills and stuff, and just gave up because we couldn't see any change. The lady that owns it and has her kids, and they're all there. They're not kids. They're in their late 30s, early 40s maybe, and all their friends still living there. But I would appreciate it if something could get done to get them in gear and get them moving and get that stuff out of there. And I know there's lots of it around the valley, but this is just one of many. Thank you.
I'll get the pictures back as soon as it reaches the end of the table for you.
Okay, Bill Folsom, I think maybe he's gone also. Nancy has gone. And that's the end of the sign up for the audience participation. But if there's somebody, come on, Lori.
Got a frog in my throat. Loy Thurman. I don't want to minimize anything that these people have been talking about, but I thought that we were still dealing with Ordinance 22-119, which I believe that we are, correct?
No, that's already been passed.
Yeah, but Well, then I'm looking at it right where we're at right now as we come
No,
down through here.
we moved it to the beginning,
Okay,
and so we're under audience participation now, sir.
okay.
Yeah.
Can I address any portion
Sure.
such as
You
this
can
other lady?
Talk
Okay,
about anything,
okay.
as long as it's G-rated.
Yeah, okay. Santa Claus tends to do that, so that's, but I don't want to minimize their difficulties and problems, you know.
Yes,
and
it is.
And a lot of places will take metal, you know, that there's money, not as the money that there was in past. So anyhow, where I'm at is in relation to that, I have a little bit of a differing opinion from Elsie. I appreciate the clerk and that responsibility, but the clerk works at the behest of the assembly and also of the people. And so ultimately it comes to them. We've seen ultimate times and problems across the country to where the clerk begins to have an attitude that comes there as though it is theirs, and who the heck do you think you are to even question that there could possibly be any impropriety whatsoever. And that if you're being completely honest, there should be no problem, right? If you're totally honest with everything, there should be no difficulty whatsoever. So all I'm saying is it's the people who are the ones that have that final say, because we're trying to protect the vote to make sure that we do have honest elections. You know, that's what we want. And so if they're having honest elections, then there shouldn't be a difficulty at all, because the bottom line is we're open and we're transparent. Everybody talks about these wonderful terms of being transparent, but then we find out all of a sudden there's all kinds of pinochle shuffling in the background. And a big problem is with absentee ballots and early voting. Those are huge. I went down to Juneau for the recount down there on this ballot measure too. When we went down there, Gail Funanami, the director of elections, was only going to allow 2 people to observe 30 tables, an entire statewide thing. And I asked her, I said, this is a statewide election. I said, who made that decision? She said, I did. Well, the following day we had legislators who came up and brought pressure to bear on the lieutenant governor. And at that portion, we got it changed to where we could try and have a little bit more monitoring of the tables. The count came out exactly the same, you know, but they already knew that's what was going to happen. But as evening, trying to be cordial to her and everything else, I said, you know, we didn't find anything. Everything seemed to be right. But, you know, one day I'd really like to come back and be able to look at these absentee ballot envelopes. And she jerked her head at me and she said, and why would you want to do that? And I realized I had messed up, because she hadn't thought about the fact that this is an easy way to cheat on the absentee ballots. And all you got to do is call up the envelopes and say, hello, Mrs. Jones. Did you happen to vote in the whatever election it was? No, you didn't. Are you certain of that? Okay, well, thank you, Mrs. Jones. And then you can go down the other list that says who all voted right here. You can say, whoa, we've got a problem here. And that's where also the thing came in with the problem of the 113,000 people's data that was stolen, because they only need one of the different 5 things so that they can apply for an absentee ballot. So that's the problem. And we found out about the break-in of the people's data 3 days after the election. So I just want to say thank you. And I appreciate the fact that you're listening to the people. I appreciate that very much, because what we do want is truthfulness and clarity and transparency in elections. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address the assembly on any subject? Caleb, do we have anybody online? We do not. Okay. So we will close the audience participation. We are now at the consent agenda. Does the assembly have anything to pull from the consent agenda?
Just one item. It's tiny.
Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Resolution 22-100, a resolution directing the manager to prepare for a 2023 transportation systems package for assembly consideration in the spring of 2023.
Deputy Mayor,
I move to approve the consent agenda as read into the record by the clerk.
is there any objection? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. There is no unfinished business. There are no vetoes. Madam Clerk.
Introduction for public hearing on October 18th, Resolution 22097, Resolution 22098, Ordinance 22112 with accompanying Resolution 2290, Ordinance 22120 with accompanying Resolution 22099, and Ordinance 22121 with accompanying Resolution 22101.
Deputy Mayor,
I move to introduce the legislation as read into the record by the clerk and set the public hearings for October 18th, 2022.
discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, the legislation is introduced. We do not have anybody on the vacancy report, I believe.
We do. We have one resignation.
Oh, okay. So Deputy Mayor,
I move to confirm the mayor's recommendations as follows. Greater Butte RSA number 26, resignation of Mike Shields.
okay. Any discussion? Yes, go ahead, sir.
Maybe I shouldn't say this. He might be watching, but he doesn't know this. We're having a retirement cake and ice cream for him at the Butte Community Council meeting on October it's the second.
It's a Wednesday
It's the
night, I
Wednesday. It's
know.
Wednesday.
Yeah,
It's
is
the.
it next week.
It's next week. Yes. Yes. So today's the 4th. That'd be the 12th.
Yes, June 12th. Mhm. Okay.
Hopefully he wasn't listening.
Any further discussion? Any objection? Hearing nothing, vacancy report is approved. There is no new business. There are no referrals. And we will now do Assembly, Mayor, and staff comments. Assemblyperson Yan, do you have parting comments, sir?
No, ma'am, no comment.
Okay. Mr. Attorney, parting comments? Assemblyperson McKee?
I just got to say, and I'll be brief, the guy that accused us of lining our pockets being up here, that ain't happening, I got to tell you. The other thing is to even infer in any way that we are not patriots. I'm telling you what, I will die for this country. And I don't like it when people say that. So we can disagree, but we damn well better disagree in an agreeable manner, because that was very offensive. Just saying. Thanks.
Assemblyperson No. Assemblyperson Hill? Assemblyperson Ron?
I want to thank everyone for their support in the ordinance. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for their support on the ordinance tonight, and I would like to thank God. Thank you, Lord, for your love and guidance. May we go forth this week with your love on our lips, our mind, and our hearts. Please grant us wisdom, Lord, to be our best. May we be the cloaked in your full suit of armor. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Mr.
Just a
Manager?
couple, yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple things real quick. We will have the emergency services inventory list to you tomorrow. So we'll get that knocked out into you. Also, there'll be a couple other updates in tomorrow's weekly post as well. One of those will be that DOT is hosting a 75% design review on the Bogard, Engstrom, Green Forest Drive intersection at Pioneer Peak Elementary next week. There's been a lot of conversation about that intersection. So if you're interested in what they're doing there and kind of what that timeline looks like, they are doing an open house next week at Pioneer Peak Elementary. And then lastly, the clerk read into the record the two resolutions, one for the state legislative priorities and the other for the federal legislative priorities. Typically, we don't do an introduction for a resolution. It's a one-meeting deal. But with these, it's a pretty robust list. So we introduced it tonight to put it on the record for a couple of weeks and hold a public hearing specifically for each one at the next regular assembly meeting. So would encourage the assembly to look through that. If you have amendments that you would like to bring forward, let me know. Staff would be happy to help you craft that if you so see fit to do so. I had intended to do a staff report tonight on those, so you had a couple weeks to think about it. But out of respect for Ordinance 22-119, we decided to stay out of the way of that tonight and just let it sit on the record. So we will have a staff report at the next regular meeting, but obviously it's up for public hearing. So if there are amendments that you can think of or things that you want to discuss, obviously some advance notice would be helpful. Thank you.
Assemblyperson Hale, do you have a question?
Yeah, what was the time? It was at the elementary school there, but at what time?
6:30 to 8:30 on October 13th.
And that will be in tomorrow's weekly post. And we put it out on Facebook tonight, on the borough's Facebook, just for the community. So it's out there on social media.
Okay. Madam Clerk, comments? Okay. Assemblyperson Hours?
Just appreciated all the people who came out to speak tonight. And I do think we're all trying to get to the same place. So I think we should keep discussing it. There's more work to be done. And also to note, on October 14th, there will be a meeting on the vagrancy problem in Palmer that I believe the city of Palmer is organizing. It'll be at the Matanuska-Susitna School District, but there's been some increase in that lately and some concerns about safety, et cetera. So if you're interested in that, it's October 14th. And I believe it's in the evening. I believe it's 6 p.m.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, parting comments?
No comment other than I look forward to that meeting on the Bogart-Engstrom roundabout. So thanks.
Okay. I don't have any comments either. And so meeting's adjourned at 9:04.